Morning, brothers and sisters. It's working. I thought we'd look at a chapter today. Psalm 78 is going to be our study chapter today. And we're going to, of course, look at it through different eyes. We're going to look at, I believe, the eyes that it was always intended to be looked through, which is the Spirit's eyes and not physical eyes, in the sense that we're clouded with Baal's theology as opposed to the Spirit's understanding, the understanding that the Spirit gives to each one of us, if we're paying attention to her, and the Spirit is she. We've identified her as the daughter of Zion that was cast off. She was the outcast whom no man sought after. She represented the righteous daughter. He cast her off because he didn't want to covenant with the righteous spirit, because she was the one who governed the land. And so he chose covenant with the harlot spirit. We're told that plain as day. Galatians 4 tells us these two women are an allegory to two covenants, and that fallen Adam actually chose a covenant with the harlot spirit and his daughter Babylon, and that basically meant that he got to rule himself. That's basically what that meant. And so with that understanding your key of David, and is in total opposition to your key of Solomon, we studied how Solomon daubed up the walls, the breaches in the wall of David his father. That's where you get your allegory to your key of David. It's not a literal key of David in a sense you're going to run in and find a key. The key was represented by these daughters who passed back and forth through these gates that Solomon calls the breaches. And so we get our allegory to a wall, and what Adam did, he daubs that wall up, and he in effect locks in the harlot spirit, which makes him his own governor. He governs his own body, is what that's telling you, which then leads to the abomination that maketh desolate. Okay, so we've done video after video on this. If you want to go in and you want to study it, you may come to understand the deeper truths in the scriptures, which are called riddles. All right, dark sayings, mysteries, hidden things. All right, and we're told that they will be revealed in the end. All right, now we're going to look at Psalm 78 with that understanding. All right, that we know what the key of David is, which is she, which is daughter Zion, which was the righteous spirit representing Mother God, who is the great God Almighty from above that gives life to all things. And she worked through these daughters in a very mighty way, and they were given covenant to the sons. All right, in covenant to teach them the laws of heaven, wherein you'll find eternal life and your salvation, which is clearly indicated in this chapter once we get our truth. So instead of saying he where it says he, I'll warn you right now, I'm going to say she, because my studies have led me that this is clearly how it was supposed to be read before the men of Baal took control of the law of the word. And your word upon this earth was a living word called the daughter of Zion. She was actually a living word. Man took control, and he actually began to make it a written word wherein he could manipulate the text and say the things that he wanted to, and wherein he began to put more faith in this as opposed to the spiritual aspect. All right. Now, that's the basis of it. It's not all of it. We certainly have much more evidence to back up what we're saying. It's found in the Word of God for anybody who wants to go in and study. Now, Psalm 78, verse 1. Maskil of Asaph. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. Now let's look at that word Asaph. A maskil of Asaph. What does Asaph mean? Well, if you look it up, it's going to take you to Hebrew number 623. And from there, it'll lead you back to 622. Because what it really means is your gatherer, your collector. To gather for my purpose. And who does that? Well, we're told it's the Spirit that does that. The Spirit is the one that's going to gather us. Well, we also get a reference to the gatherer, also in Ecclesiastes chapter 12. And she's called the preacher, actually, which is not a very feminine word as our little minds have been taught, but when you go in and you look the actual word up, it means a female assembler. And an assembler, guess what, does what? Gathers. And we're told what that gatherer does. I ain't got this passage pulled up, so let's go to it. Okay. So we'll go to Ecclesiastes 12 is the one we're going to look for here. Did I get it? I'll get there. I'm always slow at this. Okay, Ecclesiastes 12 says this. I think it starts at verse 5. Maybe I'm wrong. Sort of got a mess here. Alright, where does it start? We will start at verse 9. Alright? And it's called in my Bible the conclusion. Ecclesiastes 12, verse 9. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught. No, she still taught the people knowledge. Yea, she gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. Now this is going to take us actually to our second verse here in Psalm 78. With this Asaph, who says, "Give ear, O my people, to my law, incline your ears to the words of my mouth." Now let's quickly look at what it means to be my people. To be my people means you're hearkening to the Spirit's words and laws. That's what it just said here. What did the Shulamite say in Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 5? She says, verse 6, "Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyards have I not kept." So we're actually looking at two vineyards. She's keeping his vineyards, but not her own. So what does it mean to have your own vineyard? It means that they're listening to your law, and they're giving ear to your words, to the words of your mouth. Alright? Which is precisely what the daughters of Zion were given in covenant for. They were given in covenant to teach the children the law of heaven. They are her birthright. They are known as her inheritance and as her birthright. The birthright never belonged to no son. But here we have her teaching his vineyard. Why is it his vineyard? Well, it's his vineyard because she's teaching his theology to it, his laws to it. But her own, she's neglected. Well, that takes us back to those two women in allegory in Galatians 4. For anybody who can reason and put a riddle together, which is where we're going to in a minute, that these two women are an allegory that tells us Adam chose a covenant with the harlot spirit wherein he got to write his own doctrine and his own laws. And we're told that that covenant came to look like Old Testament laws. The more study and the more understanding you do. And Habakkuk 2:15, it states, he put drink to his sister's lips, not his neighbor, his sister's lips, and taught her the doctrine he wanted taught. And it says so he could expose her nakedness. That means he made her his harlot. He made her the daughter of Babylon. He made her what he wanted her to be. And it began with Nimrod, the building up of Babylon, which means that he came against these righteous daughters of Zion who had righteous sons, who backed them, who fought for them. And he began to come against them in a very violent manner. And so we did that study in our video called Nimrod, the Mighty Hunter Upon the Land. You can look that video up if you'd like. So to basically be her people means that you are inclining to her law. You are listening to her. Now Asaph here, this is Asaph, but this is the assembler. The preacher here is an assembler, the female assembler. Let's actually go in and look it up. Let me see, because it ain't got the word wrote right out. It's funny I didn't put it here. Normally when they won't give me a word, I will write it out with a pen. So let's go to Ecclesiastes 12, if my computer's actually going to work. And so far, so good. Okay. So Ecclesiastes 12, we'll do parallel chapters. We'll go into verse 9. Alright, we'll look up the word for preacher here and see what it says. I know I've done this before, but I can't remember. Interlinear. We'll hit on our interlinear. Okay, our teacher here, 6953. This is the Hebrew word. Let me write that down. I got a pen? I do have a pen. A collector of sentences. Alright. So, let me see here. preacher is 6953. Alright, so I'll have it there. So, a collector of sentences, they'll have you believe it's masculine. They got masculine. But let's go down. A collector of sentences, a preacher, a son of David. But let's keep going down here and see what else it says. Oh, feminine. It's feminine of active participle from kahal. Now, I don't know if I'm saying that right. A female assembler. A lecturer, abstractly preaching, used as a nom de plume, koleth, preacher. So it's a female, they got that in brackets because, well, it's a feminine of the active participle. So it would make it a female assembler, not a preacher or a he here as they got you believing. That's what it means to go in and actually do your homework and to allow the Spirit to put your thoughts together. That's how you reason with the Spirit, all right? And your eyeballs is actually bearing witness to a lot of the lies that they have actually perpetuated against the daughters, which is to say that the Godhead is he, when God says in the very beginning, let's make them in our image, and we got a male and a female, and Hebrews says this tabernacle below reflects the one above, and yet we're told it's a he, and your eyes believes the lies written on a book, on a page. And this is what gives you death, it says. Now, I wrote this under another one. I'm losing sight of what I'm actually supposed to be reading here. But just a minute here. Let's just look at this briefly, if I can actually locate it. Okay. What chapter was it? It was 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 3? Yeah. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6, what does it say? Who also have made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter, go look that word letter up. Go look it up. You'll be shocked at what it means. It means book. It means, I'm trying to think of the word now, I can't think of it. It means revelation. It means these verses. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. So it's telling you right there. And Christ warned us away from man's vain traditions. He said, don't get caught up in their lies. You understand the truth through the Spirit. So that means we're already caught up in the lies, in a fallen theology. And based on what we've been given, we have to find the truth. All right? We have to be able to do that. And the Spirit has gave us a way to do that by weaving like a silver thread the truth in through all these lies. All right? And that's precisely what we've been proving. That their man-made theology that the Baals, the sons of Baals and Belial teach, the sons of darkness, your husband who wants to be your ruler and master, who just looks in the Word of God and says, see, it proves it. But baby, when you come against them and you say, look, I'm your equal, of course, the gloves come off. That wasn't Christ. Sorry, that was nothing like my Christ. That's more like a man wanting to rule over me, and the gloves will come off, and he'll prove it through the Word. Whose Word? It's told us it was Baal's Word. The living Word of God was the daughter Zion upon this earth, and no man sought for her. Daughter Zion, she became the outcast that they didn't want a covenant with. Why? Because it was the laws of heaven that ruled this earth that stated everybody was equal under that law, and they couldn't have that. So, these two women are an allegory to two covenants, but Eve slept with Satan. Not Satan, actually, it was Lucifer. Satan is your husband, the accuser. Lucifer, come to be the harlot. All right? Who said, okay, I'll be the principality and the governing spirit over your world. Go look principality and governing spirit up in your New Testament. It's female. That's the governing spirit of this world. The harlot. Because why? Because Adam exalts the harlot in his heart. Habakkuk 2 says, shameful spewing will come upon his foreskin, his covenant. And I find it utterly fascinating that they'll preach Christ, 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 who was circumcised, and every Christian male today is not circumcised. I think it's showing us exactly who their covenant truly is with. The harlot, Old Testament law that makes them feel really good and tickles their little ears. That's what this is. But this is the female assembler here, which takes us back to this gatherer, believe it or not, who is your spirit that gathers, saying, hearken, give ear, O my people, my children, my inheritance, to my law. I'm no longer going to teach his lying words to my children, to my vineyard. They belong to me. They always did. But he took control of that law. He began to use violence. But we're going to understand why that was permitted. So I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old. So to utter a dark saying means it's a riddle. You go look it up. It means it's a mystery. It's a riddle. It's something that's been hidden from our understanding. That's our basic understanding of what a dark saying is in the scriptures. And you'll get a reference to this supposed king. Now, I haven't gone in and studied this passage, but I believe it's actually a queen that you're looking at. Let's just pick a passage here. At the end of their rule, when their sin is at its height, a fierce, not king, a queen, a master of intrigue will rise to power. So, watch what another translation says. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a queen, not a king, a bold face, and one who understands riddles shall arise. So let's go back and read this. I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old. So that's Psalm 78, verse 2. Then we're going to go to Ecclesiastes 12, verse 9, right? And it says, and moreover, because the preacher, the female assembler, your gatherer, your spirit, was wise, she still taught the people knowledge, yea, she gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. Many proverbs, she sets the truth in order, is what it's telling you here. She sets the truth in order. And she does so from beginning to end. And I wish I'd have went in and found the verse, but Mother God says, who can tell me what took place from beginning to end? From the very beginning to the end. Who can tell me that? And here your Asaph says, I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old. I'll tell you the mystery. I'll tell you the hidden things that those men of Baal buried under their lying words. It's called the false foundation that we came to be founded upon. The harlot spirit, which is the principality and the power of this world. The hidden lying harlot that he exalts in his heart so he can rule himself. He didn't want the righteous daughter. She became the outcast that no man sought after. That's what we're looking at. But this one here, the preacher, the female assembly, sets it all in order, sets the proverbs in order. That's akin to uttering dark sayings of old, a hidden thing. The female assembler sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. She's looking for the truth. She's searching for the truth. Not man-made lies. Not man-made theology taught to her from a pulpit, well rehearsed, week after week after week. It starts to get really stagnant after a while. And what does it say? The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherdess, not a shepherd. Oh man, it's just like nailing them to a cross, these wise words. It hurts their feelings. I know there's a deeper allegory there. I have it written down somewhere too. But you get into so many allegories, it gets hard to keep them all straight. But it's these words, it's nailing them. These lying Adams to the cross. It's nailing their lies. Their lies and their sins to the cross. The truth does that. Which we have heard and known of our fathers. It says, I will open my mouth in parable, I will utter dark sayings of old. I'll reveal the riddle to you. I will set the proverbs in order, the truth in order. Which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. Our mothers told us the truth in the very beginning, and we're told in this chapter, once we get the right gender on the whole thing, what they did. So we got it from our mothers, and we will not hide them from their children, from our children, showing to the generations to come the praises of the Lord and her works and her strength and her wonderful works that she hath done. Not he. They got he. The men of Bel wrote he in this, not she. All right? That's your key of David, who was God manifested on this earth. The Spirit would come upon these daughters in a mighty way. And it says, we will not hide them from their children. That's the vineyard being restored back to these daughters in Hosea chapter 2. Let's go to Hosea chapter 2. So where's Hosea? It says this in Hosea chapter 2. Let me see if I can find it. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, I will call her out, and bring her into the wilderness, that's a desert, and speak comfortably unto her. I will tell her the truth. And I will give her her vineyards from thence. I'll give her vineyards back to her, and the valley of Achor for a door of hope. And she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, and as in the day when she came up out of the land of Egypt. So she says she's going to restore her vineyards back to her. And yes, we were looking at Egypt. It's amazing how prophecies tend to be stacked in scriptures. Or perhaps they're not stacked. Perhaps they haven't come to pass yet, like they like to claim. So, which we have heard and made known, and our mothers have told us, we will not hide them from our children, from their children, showing to the generations to come the praises of the Lord and her strength and her wonderful works that she hath done. Let's move on here. For she established a testimony, it says in Jacob. I'm going to say in Judah. Judah represents your male, and Israel represented your female, okay? Jacob got his title as Israel from Sarah. He did not get that title from Abraham, and it was a battle with the angel. Well, Israel means Sarah El. You get it derived from Sarah El. El means God, and Sarah actually means to wrestle. So here we have a show of the Spirit of the Lord wrestling is what we have, which is she. Jacob actually got his title from his grandmother. He did not get it from Abraham. The title, the real meaning of Israel, actually establishes that as a truth. All right? So, and they made it everything male. Male, male, male. And we lost sight of the X chromosome. That's what we lost sight of. For she established a testimony in Judah. He was to testify to the truth of what the daughter of Zion told him, and appointed a law in Israel. And that law was appointed through the daughter of Zion. And I believe she comes from the tribe of Ephraim. Which she commanded our mothers that they should make them known to their children. It was not the father's responsibility to make them known to the children, though yes, that was part of his testimony. It was her job to make them known to her children. Her children. The birthright don't belong to no male. It belongs to the female. It always did. And she's the spirit upon this earth known as daughter Zion, who was rejected and the outcast that no man sought after. He wanted the harlot so he could rule himself. Verse 6, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children. Verse 7, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep her commandments. We've been keeping his, then we'll take you to hell. And might not be as their fathers. We are going to put fathers here. A stubborn and a rebellious generation. A generation that set not their hearts aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God. That was daughter Zion. She represented God upon this earth, and they didn't want her. We did a study on what the sons of Israel did to this righteous scepter, the righteous daughters of Zion. known as the scepter, the scions, were your daughters, your branches, with the abundant word of God. It says your mother flowed in your blood like a vine, and she still does. That's that X that she literally marked her daughters with in this chapter. She's in our blood, and she has been from the beginning, once you understand who the Spirit truly is. Now, she says, you were not steadfast with God. We did that study, Psalm 106, where the sons of Israel actually began to feed into Balaam's lies and Balak's lies, and began to come against these daughters of Zion, right? So they turned, and they were a rebellious generation. And mother threatened then she would take her rod, her staff, which is a symbol of rulership, from them. And indeed she did. She cast them out into the fields of the Gentiles. Verse 9, the children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. Now, I was looking at this in a different way before I stumbled upon this understanding. So the men of Ephraim tend to favor fighting with bows. And from my understanding, they appeared to be very well versed in the bows and handling. This was their choice of weapon. Now here I thought they literally turned back because they didn't support the daughter Zion. But now, if you hit on this verse, it'll take you to a different understanding, which then lined up with some other things that I knew. And this is what it'll tell you when you hit on it. Do I get it pulled up somewhere? I do. This is what it'll tell you when you pull it up. It says, both the disappointment on the day of battle and the cause of the disappointment, which are mentioned in the text, will be appreciated by the English reader who remembers that the result of the battle of Crecy was determined at the outset by a shower of rain which relaxed the strings of our enemies' bows. All right. So here, and we know it's the enemy here that was referenced, right? That got turned back. But here, these sons of Ephraim, the children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, and it may well have been the daughters of Zion at this point, because, and we'll understand why as we move on, being armed and carrying bows turned back in the day of battle. This is not the same as what these sons did in the day of Deborah, when Deborah was the judge, and they turned back in the day of the battle. I think Ephraim was one that did, but I'm not going to get into that. But what this caused me to do was to recall what was stated in Job 30, when mother began to cast the daughters of Zion down. Now this was due in part because the sons of Israel were rejecting their rule, did not want them. So mother threatens them, says, fine, you don't want them, I'll cast them off. You won't have them. But watch what it says in Job 30, verse 11. When we understand what it meant to have an unstrung bow, it meant you couldn't fire back. All right? You could not defend yourself. Now, we use that allegory in the words to the daughters of Zion. When these sons of Baal come in, they began to take control of the law, right under the law, and took our power to fight back from us, which come in the context or the allegory of an unstrung bow. And here we have Ephraim, who turned back in the day of battle with these bows that really become unstrung. And we get it in Job 30, verse 11. Now that God has unstrung my bow and afflicted me, they throw off restraint in my presence. We're talking about the daughters here. And we know this to be true. You can be, say, a woman in a group of men, for whatever reason, you're there with your husband, and there's just a bunch of men, and they'll be talking around you just like you're not even there. Next thing, they'll start slamming women. They won't even look you in the eye. It's just like you're not even there. They cast off restraint in her presence because they no longer viewed her as their righteous ruler. All right? They said, she's not the ruler. We'll rule ourselves. We've got harlots under us that'll do whatever we tell them. We'll feed them our doctrines, and they'll teach what we tell them to teach. And that's just what happened. So, but here you see clearly that God unstrung her bow. All right? Which takes you to Psalm 78. But in Job 40 we get this. And it's in view, it's the behemoth that's in view. Now, when you understand behemoth, I believe when you understand the term behemoth, you'll get the understanding that it was really referencing a huge heifer. That's really a auroch, a reem, but it was a cattle. It was a large cattle is what it takes you to, I believe, when you run out a series of words. This is actually an allegory to Israel, the heifer. And she's powerful when she's doing what she's supposed to do. And we're told that she has so much power that nobody else can touch her save one. Watch what it says. She, which is the heifer, representing Israel as her inheritance, as her daughters, which ruled the lands, she is the chief of the ways of God. She that made her can make her sword to approach unto her. So the one that she was cut from, or came from, is the only one that can cast her down and take her out. That's what that's saying. Which she chose to do because she promised that she would reconcile the nations back. And we get that in Romans chapter 11. Watch what it says. Now, I don't know how far I am, but I got to get moving here. Romans 11. What then? Israel had not obtained that which it's got he? No. This was the woman's seed. She seeketh for. But the election had obtained it, and the rest were blinded. So we're told in here she marks them. She literally marks them. And it means that they come of her through the X chromosome, I believe, the mitochondrial DNA. Mother was like a vine in your blood. And they got cast out into the fields of the Gentiles so that the nations could actually be reconciled back to Israel. And then what does it say? For if the casting away of them, that your branches represented as the daughters of Zion, whom man no longer sought after, did not want her. Even the sons of Israel decided they didn't want her. They wanted the teachings of Baal so they could rule themselves. Baal is your husband, 1167. Go look at it. These were the same ones, the same archers in Joseph's blessings in Genesis 49 that shot at the branches. And the word for branches there is the daughters as they moved back and forth through the wall of David, which is your key of David. They were your righteous rulers that gave life to their body. How do we know it? Because it tells us right here. You watch what it says. But it says, if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world. So we're told why they were cast off by mother. And why she cast them down, so she could reconcile the nations back to her. What shall the receiving of them be, but life from the dead? So why she got cast out there in the fields of the Gentile, the purpose was to reconcile them back, which is going to be life from the dead, right? And it says it here. So she tells us she's the only one who can approach to her and take her down. And we're told she did so. She caused this casting down in Lamentations chapter 2 verse 1. How had the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in her anger? Well, now she was not angry at the daughters. And cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel. That's the glory of Israel. The glory, the spirit, the glory that governed it. The woman was the last thing created, representing the glory. She was also rejected by the first Adam for a covenant with the harlot so he could govern himself because he did not want her. And remembered not her footstool in the day of her anger. So the Lord here is 136. It is a reference to the spirit that governed these daughters. And it was only she that could cast them off and no longer use them to rule through, which she promised the sons that she would do. She would cast them off. And so when she cast them off, because the sons no longer wanted actually the righteous spirit in covenant, she actually got cast off out of this mantle. And this mantle, the mantle that she governs through, is this body. This was the mantle that she wore. And in Zechariah 11, she is told by mother to break her covenant with them because the men no longer wanted her in covenant. And she says, cast what they will give you for this mantle, which was 30 pieces of silver. to the potter's house, the Creator, her. And she says, I'll make it even greater. You'll not only inhabit the Israelites, you'll inhabit the Gentiles. They'll all be your children. They will hear your word. They will all hear your law. I will enlarge the tent of thy dwelling, O desolate daughter, to dwell in. They will hear your law. They will hear your word, because I'm going to make it so. So here she cast off that glory. We're told why she did it, so that the nations would be reconciled back to her, and then actually enlarging the desolate woman's tent that she dwells in. All right, which means the Spirit and the law. All right, how far am I here? Okay, we're still good. Okay, so we'll try to get through this relatively quick. Okay, so they turned back in the day of battle. Now we kind of understand why that might be so. Verse 10, they kept not the covenant of God and refused to walk in her law. That's the outcast, daughter Zion. They did not want her law. They did not want to be governed by no daughters. They said, we'll govern ourselves, we'll cut her off. We got the harlots, we'll rule through them. That'll become the principality and power here, and we'll hide her in our heart. And that's precisely what she says in Isaiah 47, daughter Babylon. She says, I will never be childless. I will never be widowless. I'm hid in his heart. No one sees me. No one suspects a thing. And yet, Habakkuk 2:15 and 16 says, shameful spewing will come upon his covenant. It's going to turn to the right hand. Know ye not your own right hand can save you. That's the daughter Zion. And mother says, to what man will I give my right hand to? Well, it ain't going to be no fallen Adam she gives it to. It'll be a son that exalts the key of David upon his shoulder. That's your daughters brought back, raised up on the shoulders. You get that allegory in the scriptures. I believe it's Isaiah 49, but it may be a different chapter. So, all right. And forgot her works and her wonders that she had showed them. All right? They forgot all of these things. These just became riddles to us. Dark things that we forgot about, that became a mystery to us. Hidden things that we no longer sought for or looked for, because we had his lying theology that we began to walk in. It became this very crooked path. We have to straighten that path. That means straighten the truth, the word that is found in here, despite all of his lies that he's told over the centuries. And we are told it is the daughters that will straighten that path, that will make straight that path once again, and welcome the spirit of Mother Jerusalem into these daughters once again. There's a big difference, however, this time around. All right? So just give me a minute. Okay. So there's a big difference going on this time. All right? And that's where we get the twofold that's going to actually come into effect. That's promised, and it's actually promised to the daughters. And forgot her works and her wonders that she had shown them. These are your daughters of wonders. These are your daughters to be wondered at, actually, in Zechariah 3, which they call men. No, your branch comes from this group of daughters of Zion. There's 144,000 called out for the final leg of the race. And out of that comes the one who will be wed to Christ. And it is mother that crowns the son. We're told that in Song of Songs. I forget which chapter. I think it might be chapter 3, verse 11. And it is the mother that crowns the son, because she not only birthed the son, she births the glory as well. She not only births the clay, forms the clay, she forms the spirit that formed the clay. So this is the crown, the queen. That's who she is. Marvelous things did she in the sight of their fathers and their mothers, in the land of Egypt and in the fields of Zoan. Verse 13, she divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and she made the waters to stand as a heap. Let's get through this. In the daytime also she led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. She clave the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink as out of the great depths. She brought streams also out of the rock, and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against her, provoking the Most High. She's called the Most High. Daughter Zion, who is inhabited by God, is the reference here as the Most High in the wilderness. All right, she, who no man sought after. They sought to cast her off, and they did. She became the outcast spirit. And they tempted God in their hearts by asking meat for their lust. You see an allegory. Here you see the lust of the flesh. You got an allegory here. That's why God asked Abraham that for a symbol of this covenant that he would be circumcised, to cut off that foreskin. Because that foreskin symbolized the lusting of the flesh, of the harlot spirit that was going to allow him to rule himself, as opposed to allow the righteous spirit her rightful place as the glory, as the ruler of the body, which is who Christ is, who he, the new man, represents, not the old one. He's still got the harlot hiding in his heart. And baby, when you tell him this, the gloves comes off. That's not Christ-like. Not a thing like Christ. And rulership is totally different from the female than it is from the male. The male rules through a hard hand. That's how males rules. I'm your ruler, I'm your king, you'll do what I say. That's rulership by male. But watch how the females actually were instructed to rule by God coming in through. Very different. It's very different in its manner. Very different. Verse 19, yea, they spake against God. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? But their hearts were lusting after flesh. You get the allegory there, right? Verse 19, they spake against her. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? They began to question her authority. They began to question her power on earth. They actually began to say to her, you're not God. That's what they began to really say to these daughters. Behold, she smote the rock that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can she give bread also? Can she provide flesh for her people? They were taunting her. They were baiting her. They were saying she was less than what she was claiming to be. Therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Judah. Not Jacob, Judah. And anger, that's your male. And anger also came up against Israel. Now it could well be the daughters who were beginning to succumb to these wicked men. And it also could be an allegory once again to those males in Psalm 106 that were beginning to hearken to the words of Balaam and Balak. And they began to take in these harlots that had been sent in by Balaam, who told Balak to go get the women and send them in and seduce the men and take the right hand, the strong right hand, daughter Zion, out that way. They actually wanted to take her seed out of the land of Israel. That's what they wanted to do, and they actually did do that. Verse 22, because they believed not in God and trusted not in her salvation. There's the word we want to look at up to get what we're really looking at when it comes to rulership and when it comes to salvation. All right. Let's look this word up. This is an important word to our understanding here. 3444. All right? They did not believe or trust in her salvation, her deliverance. It's feminine, and it's Yeshua. Y-E-S-H-U-A-H. Watch what it says here to get your understanding. Deeds of deliverance, help, prosperity, salvation, saving, security, victories. It's a feminine noun. Let's go down. Health, helping, salvation, saving health, welfare, something saved, hence an aid, victory, prosperity, deliverance, helping, health, welfare. Get it? This actually takes us back to the study of what we did in Isaiah 22. In the valley of vision, the valley of confusion, when they began to literally cast off the daughters of Zion rule, and I actually through the words managed to link it through an acolyte of Elisha's. It looks like his name links quite strongly there in Isaiah 22 in the casting down of the daughters Zion there, when they actually began to go up to the rooftops and worship the hosts of heaven. And she more or less says, and it's the Spirit speaking there saying, haven't I kept you safe? No sword has come against you since I've been in power. I've kept you healthy, long-lifed, saving health, welfare, you're safe, your deliverance, you're eating good, right? This is what rulership and to be a servant of God means, right? And that's what these daughters' rulership was akin to. They kept them safe from war, and if they did go into war, they won their battles. They kept them healthy. They kept them fed. They were prospering under these daughters' rulership. And they were casting them off at this time. This is clearly what is showing. The outcast of daughters Zion. These two women are an allegory to two covenants. For they did not believe in God or trust in her deliverance. They did not want her for their ruler. They wanted the harlot. And they hid her in her heart. Why do you think men aren't circumcised today? It's showing you exactly who their covenant is with. And when you tell them the laws of heaven puts us equal to them, and that what they're teaching us right now is not grace. They're teaching us law, Old Testament law, and telling us we're under a sinful man. That is not law of heaven. That is law of man. And you tell them that, and the gloves comes off, baby. That is not Christ's spirit. That is not the way that he was. And yet you watch it with your own eyes play out. People, men that you would have never thought would have looked at things in such a wicked way. It's mind-boggling, really, at times. Because they believed not in God and trusted not in her salvation, in her daughters. The method that she chose to deliver you through. You didn't trust in them. You cast them off. Though she had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, who commanded them? She did. She commanded them through the Spirit of Mother. That's how she commanded them. And they had rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them of the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. She sent them meat to the full. She said, fine, you want to believe in the flesh is what fills you? Then you're going to have it to the full. And what did she do? Well, we know what happened. It turned sour in their mouth as they were eating it. She caused an east wind to blow into heaven, and by her power she brought in the south wind. She rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feather fowls like as the sand of the sea. So these daughters possessed great power over the elements when they began to call on the Spirit of Mother from above. And these were her daughters that were cut from her. They were directly in her line, her X chromosome. Your mother is a vine in your blood. And she let it fall in the midst of their camp round about their habitation. So they did eat and were filled, well filled. For she gave them their own desire. What did they desire? They lusted after flesh. That's what it's telling you. They lusted after. Which is taking you to your circumcision so that man would not lust after a covenant with the harlot spirit Babylon, wherein he gets to rule himself. That's your allegory to it all. 31. The wrath of God came upon them and slew the fattest of them and smote down the chosen men of Israel. For all this they sinned still and believed not for her wondrous works. Therefore their days did she consume in vanity, and their years in trouble. When she slew them, then they sought her, and they returned and inquired early of God. And they remembered that God was their rock and the high God their Redeemer. Where do we get God as the rock? We get that in Deuteronomy 32. And what does she say in Deuteronomy 32? She says, you forgot the rock that begat you and formed you. So when you go in and you look those two words up, it means birth. You forgot the God that birthed you, and you forgot the God that writhed in pain to form you. That's the meaning of the two words there. How do you get a male God out of that? Of the rock, this is verse 18, Deuteronomy 32. Of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful and hast forgotten the God that formed you. Formed there is 23:42. Let's look it up. Hebrew 23:42 says this. It says, okay, I'll get it. 23:42. To twist or whirl, to dance, to writhe in pain, especially of parturition. I can't say the word. It's birthing. To bear, to dance in pain, to travail with pain. And a man did this. A man did this. You forgot the God, the rock. She's called your rock that begat thee. She was the rock that was rejected in the very beginning. The outcast daughter Zion, whom no man sought after, the righteous spirit. There was one that sought after and willingly died for her. And that would be the man Christ, called the second Adam, who you're to be like. And yet you still exalt that harlot in your heart. You're uncircumcised. She says, no, uncircumcised will enter into my new city. None. And you forgot that, God. But oh, it's a man that does that. It's a man that writhes in pain and forms you, I don't know, with his hand, I guess, and writhes in pain to do it. Yeah, that makes sense. That's that crooked path that Baal took you on. Nevertheless, they did flatter her with their mouth, and they lied unto her with their tongues. Men don't do this. For their heart was not right with her, neither were they steadfast in her covenant. She was gave in covenant. She was the outcast whom no man sought after, the righteous daughters, the righteous spirit. They want her to play his harlot and teach what he wants to teach and do what he wants her to do. But he, being full of compassion, she, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity and destroyed them not. See, she had compassion. Yea, many a time turned she her anger away, and did not stir up all of her wrath. For she remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passeth away and cometh not again. Let's wrap this up. How oft did they provoke her in the wilderness and grieve her in the desert? Yea, they turned back and tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel. It's clearly identified that the Holy One was the daughter of Zion, who became the outcast that no man sought after. They limited her. They began to debase her. They began to say, she has no power. We don't want a covenant with her. We want those harlots because we can rule ourselves. We don't need God. We'll cut them right off from the land. And that's just what they did. And that's your allegory to Adam daubing his wall up. And he thickened himself up with thick clay. That means the lies upon lies upon lies, and the laws upon laws upon laws, wherein he strengthens his own power. Okay. So she's called the Holy One of Israel. This begins to be our understanding here. All right. So let's get through this. How she hath wrought her signs in Egypt and her wonders in the field of Zoan. Now, they remembered not her hand, nor the day when she delivered them from the enemy. They didn't give credit. They forgot the deep riddle in all of this. The deep mysteries that she begins to expound at the end. It's called the truth upon the earth, manifested through these daughters who are marked with an X, not a cross. An X. Mother flows like a vine in our blood. It says the branches were many in Israel in the beginning because of abundant waters. Those abundant waters are the word of God from above, the law from above, that was given by these daughters known as the branches and the scions of Israel. They ensnared her in traps and lies. They used violence against her. They cast her out into the lands of the Gentiles, which was a promise by mother, and it was done to reconcile the nations back to her. All right? And had turned their rivers into blood and their floods that they could not drink. She sent various sorts of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. She gave also their increase unto the caterpillar, and their labor unto the locust. She destroyed their vines. Okay, I got to get through this. Where is it? just did a quick jump on me. She destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamore trees with frost. She gave up their cattle also to the hail and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. She cast upon them the fierceness of her anger, wrath, and indignation. That's your indignant woman, whose ways are past finding out. And trouble by sending evil angels among them. She made a way to her anger. She spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength, in the tabernacle of Ham. There we go with Ham. Because Ham was the descendant, Nimrod was a descendant of Ham. And he came against her strongly and began to build up his kingdom Babylon. Alright? Made her own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock, and she led them on safely, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And she brought them to the border of her sanctuary, even to this mountain, which she purchased with her hand, with her own right hand. That's the daughters Zions that went in and got it. And they did so through calling on the Spirit of Mother God. And she drove out the heathen also before them, and divided them in inheritance by line, and made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High God, and kept not her testimonies. They did not want a covenant with her, but turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. Bow is a symbol of a covenant. For they provoked her to anger with their high places, and moved her to jealousy with their graven images, that they began to build in opposition. So they would build these grove trees for harlots to go into, as opposed to the righteous daughters. We know this to be fact based on what Abraham did in Genesis 21. He went up and he planted a grove, and there he called on the name of the Lord. That is the daughter Zion that he was calling upon, and he was circumcised. So that she forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which she placed among the men. This is her daughter Zion, Shiloh. The scepter will not depart from between the feet of Judah until Shiloh comes. And it's told us in another passage that they received the gently flowing waters of Shiloh. They didn't want her words of truth. We're told you are to receive your words, your waters from your own wife, which was told us in Proverbs 5, which we are then told in Malachi 2, that Adam rejected a covenant with the wife of his youth. He did not want her.